Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast.
Go Blue and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. The time for previews and speculation on this Michigan football season are coming to an end. In just over a week, we will tee it up in the big house, and another season will finally get underway. With me on this week's show is a guest every Michigan fan is familiar with, Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic. Before Nick joins us, a few of my thoughts to get us rolling. It seems just like yesterday that our season came to an end with a thumping at the hands of eventual national champion Georgia. In reality, that was over 7 months ago. In that 7 months, Jim flirted with the NFL's Minnesota Vikings, our offensive and defensive coordinators left town, and recruiting ground to a halt as a result of the uncertainty surrounding the program. Slowly but surely, life in Schembechler Hall has returned to normal. Jim signed his new contract, we hired a new DC, and elevated Sharon Moore and Matt Weiss to the position of co-offensive coordinator. Even recruiting with the class of 23 is heading in the right direction. It's time for everyone, coaches, players, and fans, to turn our full attention to defending the B10 Championship and making a return to the playoffs. Will it be easy? It surely will not. But we do have the pieces to do just that. My guest today says this year's offense should be as good, maybe even better than last year's. And the defense, while not being as dynamic as last year's, should still be very good. Up next on our Game Day segment is a guest who has been joining us during the season for over 10 years, Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic. So stay with us. Here with us on today's Game Day segment as we talk some Michigan football, of course, is Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic. Nick, we've been doing this a long time, but it's great to have you back as always.
Mike, football season doesn't start, I don't think, until I talk to you. It's been like 10 years at least, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, man, we're still doing this, so that's good. I'm glad to be here as always.
It's great to have you, and of course, 2 weeks from now, a little less than 2 weeks, we get the season kicked off, so we're still in speculation mode. And in some ways, it just seems like last week Michigan was playing Georgia at the playoffs, Nick. But
yeah, right.
Time has flown, and here we are ready for another season. But it has been a very tumultuous and interesting offseason for Jim and the program, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's probably the best word, right? Tumultuous or uneven or weird. I don't know. It's just not what you want after a Big Ten Championship season. But, it was also something that I think when you looked at it in January and early February when all the stuff with the NFL sort of shook out and, feelings were hurt at the time, people were upset at the time. But I think when everything unpacked, Jim sort of, stood by it as I wanted to take a swing at it. It didn't work. I'm back here. I'm going to show you that I'm going to prove to you that I'm back here. That all seems to be fine, I guess, and well enough received internally, and he's doing his thing. But I think what we've seen, Mike, is externally, it was going to cause some issues, and I think that's what you've seen the rockiness in recruiting. It has not responded after a championship like we all thought it would have or should have, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this all was what it was, earlier this year. And I think a lot of people look at Jim and still wonder, how long is he going to be here? Is this going to happen again? And, until he proves with his actions that it's over and done with, this sort of thing is going to hang there. But the great news for Jim Harbaugh and Michigan football, Mike, as you know, is every single year he's been at Michigan, we talk about this from January to August, and then the ball kicks, and it's actually pretty normal. When the ball goes up, they play football. And usually it's something familiar, and that's when he'll have his opportunity to start proving people that last year wasn't a fluke. And I think that will be his driving force heading into the season.
Absolutely. So it's all behind him and we, the fans, now. And last week, Jim was asked about the quarterback competition. I think it was his first availability at his presser last week. And he gave a very Jim Harbaugh answer, I thought. He always makes me chuckle with some of these things he comes up with. But Cade McNamara will be tough to beat out for the starting job. J.J. McCarthy will be tough to beat out for the starting job. It's kind of a classic Harbaugh answer to a question, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that he's, I think he's loving this privately. I think that, having covered Jim, here at Michigan since he started, I remember talking to him after the very first year, after they lost Jake Rudock, and he had that great close to the year, and they finally got it unlocked. I remember asking him a question randomly once, and I was like, Jim, do you like the challenge of having to break in a new quarterback every other, you get a new guy coming in, you don't have, and he's like, he stops me like mid-sentence and gives me that like long stare. And he's like, no. He's like, what are you talking about? No, I would always prefer to have the guy, like that sort of thing. So you're like, but then he would flip on that and say, but that guy needs to be pushed. So what you have here is you have a returning starter who won the Big Ten Championship, who's going to be pushed by possibly the most talented, physically talented passer Jim has signed here. So ideally, I think this is the best case scenario competition in that room that Harbaugh could have created, because he's got two guys, I think, that he thinks get it and understand that this is about the both of them pushing each other to try to be their absolute best, and in turn that will make the team better. Not a lot of guys can handle that. Not a lot of college kids can handle that. We don't see that, Mike, every year. As you know now, it's going to be more and more rare going forward with the transfer portal and all the eligibility. But I do think, based on everything we know about Cade and everything we know about JJ, that these guys are in an honest-to-goodness quarterback fight right now. They know it. They appreciate it. And I think they probably respect it. And we'll see how it all shakes out. But I don't think they have a problem here. That's, I guess, my biggest takeaway. I think people look at these situations sometimes and they want to find a problem. And a lot of times there is one there, sort of bubbling under the surface. I don't think they have a problem right here. I think they have two guys who are, fighting for the here and now, and we'll see what happens later. And that's what you want. So all indications that I've gotten are this is exactly what you want it to be in terms of quarterback battle. But how it shakes out during the season, as we know, Mike, it's totally different, animal, and we'll see how it all goes.
Oh, absolutely. And, forever and ever, we've heard coaches say that if you have two starting quarterbacks, you have no starting quarterbacks, which, of course, last year was sort of proven to be wrong. I mean, not that JJ evenly split time with Cade, but he played every week. Would you be surprised, Nick, if there is not a named starter before the Colorado State game?
Not at all, no. I would actually be surprised if there was a named starter at any point early in the year, probably. I think that, whoever starts the first game, and that'd probably be Cade, I would guess, unless something crazy happens, I would guess that would be Cade. Whoever starts the first game will be, Jeff will say that's the starter, and whoever comes in off the bench, that'll be the number two. But I would bet, based on everything we've heard, Mike, that unless something drastic happens in practice in these next couple of weeks, I would bet both of them get a chance to play in these first couple of games. Harbaugh said that the other day. He was like, this might linger into a situation where we need to now go see them compete against somebody else, because they've both been, very good in practice, good enough to play, that sort of thing. And we'll see how they respond in games. And I could definitely see a situation where they just don't say anything. And they just say, McNamara's the starter. McCarthy's going to get his time, and that's just what we're going to do until otherwise. And I don't care what you guys think about it. And that's what he did last year. And I think that what he says, the whole thing about if you've got two starters, you don't have any, that speaks to this being pretty unique. And, Harbaugh being a unique coach, you look back and you think back to when, Harbaugh signed Andrew Luck at Stanford and knew he had him and still tried to sign Robert Griffin in the same class and almost got him and had a plan for both of them to play and compete against each other and told them both, I think you're both NFL quarterbacks. You can both push each other, and let's do it together. And it didn't work out, but that takes a unique sort of situation for that to happen. It's not going to last forever, but I think right now that's what they see this as. We have two guys who want to be NFL players, who we think that they can get there. Let's push them, and let's let them sort of push each other, and let's hope we can make the team better for it. And if it works that one of them leaves after, then whatever. We'll see what happens then. And I think that that's where this is at.
Well, whoever is under center will have plenty of talent to utilize, especially at the skill positions, and what should be a very good offensive line. And some writers have, and we're this time of the year we get used to the hype, and you start to roll your eyes, saying, "Oh yeah, better than ever, better than before." But you have a lot of people saying, if not on a par with last year's Joe Moore award-winning line, almost as good.
Yeah, I would think that should be their expectation, based on losing Andrew Stuber and not really having a replacement for him. The unique thing here is losing Bastardas and bringing in, Oluwatimi, who was a Remington finalist last year, who, frankly, if you look at the tape, was better physically than Andrew, although, you can't take away all that Bastardas meant to this line. He was so important and valuable, and it still remains to be seen if Oluwatimi can sort of completely and totally fill that void, because there was a mental and, I think, captain leadership void that also has to be filled there. But regardless, you are bringing back Zinter and Keegan, who I think are NFL prospects. Ryan Haynes is an NFL prospect. I think Olu is an NFL prospect. And then you're going to break in somebody like Trenty Jones or Carson Barnhart. And, Mike, you've watched Michigan football long enough now to know and remember what it was like when, Lloyd Carr was around.
Mm-hmm.
And, these guys would graduate, and you'd have a third-year sophomore who was, a top 5 tackle or a top 6 tackle in his class, who took the time and did it properly and waited until he was ready, and then he went and played for his next 2 or 3 years, whatever it was, and then he gets drafted. So, Carson Barnhart, Trenty Jones, that's the sort of depth I think that they've been able to build over the last couple of years. Sherrod Moore gets a ton of credit for that. I think it actually started earlier than that. Ed Warner, I think, did a lot with this. It's been so good, and it's been increasingly good, better than most teams and probably every team in the Big Ten, I would say. And Ohio State would be the only team that can maybe argue with it, that you can reasonably come into a year and say, yeah, we had one of the best lines in the country, arguably, depending on who you talk to, right? They won the Joe Moore Award. But based on everything we bring back and based on the guys that we trust, there should not be a big dip here. Maybe not better. We're not going to sit there and say, like, oh, we expect them to be better. That's not fair. But, shouldn't be a fall off. This should be the standard now. You should be shooting for that, and you have the talent to do it. So there should be no I expect Michigan's offense to be able to run the ball on pretty much everybody in the league, like that, because they did last year. And most of those guys are coming back, including the backs, except for Haskins. So that should be the expectation. I think that's fair, and I don't think that's over the top at all.
No, and as far as that running game goes, Nick, the combination of Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, knock on wood, they stay healthy.
Right.
Might be the most potent we've seen in a long time in the big house, isn't it?
Yes, I think that's fair to say. If they both stay healthy, just from a running back standpoint, Denard, I think always comes to mind for me because of all the dynamic, but he never really got paired with another guy, so it was always just Denard. So yeah, you'd have to really probably go back and look, for 2 guys that can be back there that, are both, potential home run hitters, because that's what they have. They have 2 guys who can, both make plays with their hands out of backfield as receivers. They can both run inside, outside. I saw the picture of Corum the other day. It looks like he's added a ton of weight, even from last year when he added, a bunch of bulk then. So, yeah, he looks like an NFL back in terms of look and everything else, and we'll see. I'm sure he's trying to prove that he can handle more, between the tackle type stuff this year, which I would assume means that Edwards will get more stuff outside, and we'll see how it all goes. But those 2 guys have, what's Harbaugh say, the license or whatever, the ability to do whatever they want or whatever it is. Like, those guys are great examples because they're running behind one of the best lines in the Big Ten, we'll say, and maybe the country. And even if they weren't, I think that they're talented enough at this point in their career to where they would, find ways to make plays. So yes, I think that's why you're comfortable with the quarterbacks going back and forth, Mike, because you have so much around them that you'd say, look, the rest of this is going to be okay. You just need to come in here and drive the car, and we'll see what happens, right? So right. I assume that's kind of the goal. But yeah, it's looking solid on offense for sure.
Oh, absolutely, it surely is. The receiver room too, Nick, is deep as I can ever remember it being. But the key to me, and the one I'm excited about seeing, is Ronnie Bell. It's great to have him back, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why I think it's as deep as I can remember it too. I agree with you. Like, it's different in terms of the bodies and just the guys that are here. You've seen years, and I talked about some of Lloyd's teams before. Like, you've seen even back then they would have a couple guys on the team that were obvious draft picks or whatever. But it wouldn't necessarily be like this, where you had like 6 guys or 7 guys or whatever that you could play and that you would probably be okay with, playing or contributing or whatever. And that includes, a guy like Ronnie Bell, who's going to be one of the top leaders in the league. And, Ronnie would have been one of the best receivers in the Big Ten, I think, last year. I don't think people give him enough credit for that, or probably give Michigan's offense enough credit for that. That, there's no way that he and McNamara had anything less than a terrific rapport when camp ended, I'm sure. I imagine he would have had a great season. So, he's back. Everybody's back. Everybody on this in this group that plays for Ron Bell and me, they all block. They're all physical. I really like all the advancements Cornelius Johnson's made in his game over the years in terms of route nuance and everything else. And I think, again, I look at this like I look at the offensive line. When you have depth like this, and you have guys, and I know he's been back and forth on offense, defense like Stanger still, but you have other guys like Robin Wilson or other guys that are around that like the program and care about it and have won here and are good. Every young kid that comes in is now looking up and can teach and learn, and they can pass these things on. So when you have all these guys like this, it really, you think back to all the years where Michigan would have these position rooms that would sort of hand the torch. That's what you sort of want to get back to. And I think that they're close on offense to a couple of these, to having it be, enough depth here to where you can be good for 5 or 6 years and then just sort of keep cycling how it's done here. So you don't have to go sign the best receiver in the country every single time. Just sign a good one and teach him and let him learn in here, and they'll be a good football player. And I think that they're starting to get back to some of that.
As exciting as it's going to be to see that stacked wide receiver room, let's not forget about the tight ends either, because, man, it is nice to have 2 NFL caliber guys at that position, isn't it, Nick?
Yeah, and again, I mean, Eric All, one of the more underrated, probably, two-way tight ends in the country, I would argue. One of the best in-space blockers. Schoonmaker is going to have NFL interest before the year's over. He already does. I think, he closed the year really well last year. I think he had a nice catch there in the Iowa game and had some nice blocks there late too. So both of those guys, and that becomes the bigger issue, I guess, which on a lot of other teams it probably would be an issue, but here it just hasn't been. That's 2 more like mouths to feed, so to speak, right? So we just talked about like 6 receivers. You've got Corum and Edwards, and you've got All and Luke Schoonmaker. But, there's really nobody in that group there that I would say is going to throw a fit if they don't, if they don't get, 6, 7, 8 catches or whatever it is, or targets, because we just went through a year watching them all where it was all pretty well evenly spread, but they all played, they all had roles, and they all embraced them, and that's why they won the Big Ten. And I think that they all got better in those areas that, Michigan's focused with them on. Like Eric Hall's ticket to the NFL is going to be his blocking ability and his ability to be, out there and physical. And you've seen him over the last 3 years turn the corner to where now that's what he does. Everything else is an addition too. Look, that's the money. He's a force in the run game. And I think that you've seen that growth with a lot of guys on offense. They've embraced it. They probably had no choice, after 2020 when things were as bad as they were. And a lot of them, including those 2, are reaping the rewards now.
Well, Nick, as good as the offense was last year, at least on paper, this year's looks like it could be even better, especially given the fact that I would think Michigan's going to throw the ball more this year.
Right. I would think that you should have more, you should feel comfortable probably taking more chances, I would say, this year, right? Like that's probably the best way to say it. And taking more chances means, throwing the ball more, like we're saying, because there are more guys that you're going to trust at the receiver position. You trust your offensive line to give the quarterback time, and we're trusting the quarterbacks to make the right reads, and that would include JJ, I would assume, at this point. So I think if you're the offensive staff, you're saying we have everything that we had at our disposal last year. Sharon Moore called the plays with Gaddis, so there's not really that big of a drop off there. I mean, I'm sure there was change and all that, but I mean, he's ready for this, all this. So it's just about, getting everybody right back in the same seat, I think, as best you can, getting back to trusting the things that you do really well, and then being more comfortable taking chances and letting your quarterbacks, get those receivers in space and make plays. I think that the offense, based on the people they bring back and some of the leaders they bring back, I would expect the offense to carry itself in a manner that, the defense needs our help. We needed its help last year at times. They need our help now. So that's what I think that they should, or they probably will, I would assume, carry themselves like, because Michigan's offense should be a force in the Big Ten. There's really no reason for it not to be. I think that that's how they should carry themselves, and I would expect that's what we see, when the season starts.
Yeah, I think we all expect that. But if Michigan fans are nervous about any one aspect of this team, it has to be the defense. We all know who we lost, and there's a new DC in Jesse Minter. Still, there is, it's unproven, but plenty of talent to work with, isn't there, Nick?
Yeah, plenty of talent. But, again, it's one of those things where you say you're not replacing David Ojabo and Aiden Hutchinson. You're not doing it this year. So it's not going to happen. So just nobody even bother trying. In aggregate, you try to replace the production, but, expecting someone to come off the bench there and make an impact like those 2 did together, I guess, on every single snap, it's not fair to ask of anybody. So you're going to have to do it differently. It's just, that's the bottom line. And I think that, that's why you look at Michigan's defensive situation and the plan they've had, which I think involves Jesse Minter. I mean, if you look last year, the Harbaughs, I suppose, we'll say, talked about Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter. Jim chose Mike McDonald. I don't want to say that Jesse Minter got stashed at Vanderbilt for a year, but that's pretty much what happened. He went to Vanderbilt, coached there for a year. Mike went to the NFL, and now here we are. If this wasn't a long-term plan come together, I don't know what is. So in that sense, if you're Michigan, you feel good about it because you got a guy that's coming in who understands the assignment, understands what was built here before, has a relationship with Mike McDowell. I assume if there's any questions, I know they're both busy, but there's nothing there that wouldn't be able, they'd be able to talk if they had to. So you like all that. You like that that's going to continue in terms of the thinking man's defense, because that's what last year was. It morphed and changed and became more about playing to an opponent's weakness rather than just trying to be an alpha and exert your force all the time, which is what Don Brown's defense is. At times we're very good at doing, and at times we're terrible at doing. But it never changed. I think we'll see more of, tweaking and changing, and that'll be Jesse Minter's task to prove if he's as capable as Mike McDonald was, who was, situationally last year, probably the best defensive coordinator in the country in terms of, when to go on third down, when not to, when to pressure on second down, when not. I mean, he was as good as it got, and that's why he's where he's at. So we'll see if Minter can, pull off some of that. But to your point earlier, Mike, I think this is going to have to be more of a, everybody do your job, get off the field together. We don't need 45 sacks. You know what I mean? I think that's sort of going to have to be how Michigan approaches it. That, fly the ball. You're not asking corners to stand there in man coverage on an island all the time. Play good zone defense. You've got two young safeties who played a lot of football last year back, which is good, in Moten and Rod Moore, who they trust a lot. So I think that probably helps. Some linebackers who played a lot last year probably helps. You would maybe think in a weird way they could be better in some ways in coverage than they were a year ago in terms of zone coverage. But, you also look at that and say they lost Jackson Hill. So there's a lot of, they lost a lot. A lot of guys have to prove themselves now. Mike Morris, Chris Jenkins, but those guys are ready to do that. I think that's sort of the point. There's not a lot of situations here, DJ Turner in the secondary, not a lot of situations here where you've got guys who are just walking in, and there's, other than Will Johnson, I guess, and he's only getting a chance, I assume, because he's good. You're not asking a guy to play before he's ready, and I think that's the most important thing defensively. I don't see that happening really anywhere there. So as long as that continues, I think they'll at least have a fighting chance to, improve on the track that they need to improve on, but it probably won't be great right away, I wouldn't think.
And the schedule sets up pretty well to give the defense time and Jesse Minter time to sort of, move things around, get things worked out. And it sets up well for a fast start as a team for Michigan. And I suppose the Iowa game in Iowa, a place that at Kinnick Stadium, which is a madhouse, and Michigan has always struggled there. That looks to be the first really big test, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's your, similar to your at Wisconsin last year, I think, for this team, right? Everybody, this group had gone to Wisconsin and gotten humiliated before. They knew what that place was like, and they, decided that, we're going to dance and jump and try to bring our own energy and all that sort of thing. Kinnick is that exact same situation, maybe more so. I don't know if that game's at night or not, but if it is, heaven help Michigan, because that place at night is just like a complete viper pit, and it's one of the best in college football, and it's one of the true. I don't know if Harbaugh's ever won there, Mike. To be honest with you, it's one of the true difficult venues when they're cranked up and ready to go, and it's one of the. If you can win in there, you're mentally tough, and I think that's. You're right. I think that's probably the game that the staff would look at and say, we will know a lot about where we're at or whether or not we have enough, in terms of the mental stuff to be a championship level team based on how we perform at Kinnick. Because I think that those type of situations, when you bring a team on the road like that, in these special environments like that, tell you a lot. And I think that would be a good opportunity for this group to show that.
Exactly, and it is a madhouse, as we've said. And if Michigan can get that one under the belt, get a W on the road, the other two big time games, until the end, are at home. Michigan State, Penn State.
Yep.
There's a bye week separating those two games, which is great for Michigan. But man, are those going to be big games? That Michigan State game should be huge if both teams get off to the start we think they're going to, Nick.
Yeah, I mean that'll be one of, last year I thought was a highly billed encounter, and I think this year has the opportunity to maybe be higher than that. We didn't expect last year it surprised us, I think, and those sometimes are the best Michigan State games that, when they're both good, when we maybe didn't think they would both be good. That it doesn't happen often, but when it does, it's pretty cool. This year would be the opposite of that, right? Where we probably expect them both to be very good, and we expect them both to be serious about this. And I wrote this before all the Harbaugh stuff happened in January. I got totally lost in the shuffle, and still got lost in the shuffle because people were like, "Nick, you're an idiot." But I have hope for a Mel Tucker, Jim Harbaugh, or Michigan State rivalry moving forward that is based more on respect because you're playing another really good football team than maybe I have at any point in the last 10, 15 years. Because, having seen how both teams work up close, so to speak, I guess, as close as they're going to let you get, they're real similar. I mean, they really go about their business, Tucker and Harbaugh, in very similar manners. People probably never want to admit that, but I covered Jim Harbaugh when he started. I know what Mel Tucker's doing right now. The recruiting momentum that he's building early and capitalizing on early wins. Harbaugh did the exact same thing, and it's and he did anything he could to get attention. It was a different thing, but people talk about Tucker will never turn on a photo op, all these things. I mean, he's smart. He thinks about this. I think they're both really good, smart football coaches who run smart football programs and play the game the right way. So I'm very excited about where Michigan State, the rivalry, everything else, all that, where it's at, because people, gripe and squabble and all that. The fan stuff is great, but the main event has to be on the field, and I think this year it will be, because that's going to be a whopper. I mean, if you're Michigan, you have to win that game. I mean, how you lose? I mean, you've lost. It'll be 3 in a row to this guy. I mean, you're going to do this 3 in a row, and if you flip it around, and you're Mel Tucker, so much about everything that's happened, with him has been. It looks like lightning in a bottle. Is it lightning in the bottle, or is there more to it? I mean, is there staying power? So to me, it just gets deeper and deeper with those two, and I really like the potential of that. And then obviously you mentioned Penn State, a ton of talent again, like always. But again, like always, is it going to be there and wanting to play for Penn State at the point when it needs to? And I think that's the question we can ask of James Franklin now as much as anybody.
And that's going to be fun. Both of those games will be huge at the Big House,
yep.
And big recruiting opportunities too.
Oh yeah.
We all know the Big Ten East is brutal from pretty much from top to bottom. But what about over in the West, Nick? Does any one team jump out to you as the team to beat?
Wisconsin, Wisconsin and Iowa. Iowa does bring back a good amount off of that team that was overmatched, frankly, last year that Michigan saw. Later in the year, there's still questions there, but Iowa has an identity and they play to it, and they're going to have older linemen. They lost Linderbaum, but I think they're still a team that I would look for to be good this season, or at least perform, at least at or above expectation. Wisconsin, similar situation. Jim Leonard in that defense. I mean, they've been one of the best in the country. I think in terms of not reinventing themselves every year, but also tweaking just right and making the right changes to be a step ahead, to where if they have weaknesses, you don't see them. Jim Leonard's been one of the best coordinators, offensive or defensive, in anywhere in college football in the last 5 or 6 years. So I would still think those two. Northwestern is older, Mike, and that typically means Fitzgerald's been there for 100 years. We have enough evidence now to base a lot of stuff on. When they're older, they're not all the way old yet. So I don't think Northwestern will be good, but I think they'll be better, and they'll probably surprise some people. Like last year, we knew they were going to be bad because they were super young, and Fitzgerald's teams are horrible when they're young. But they're going to be a little older now, all that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they surprise a few people.
Well, and this Saturday we get to see them play over in Ireland against Nebraska.
Yeah,
so
in
that
Ireland for some reason. I don't know why, but
yeah. I don't know either. Maybe because of Fitzgerald, but
they would be in Nebraska too. Hey, look, Mark Whipple coming over there. That's going to be fascinating to see how Mark Whipple and Scott Frost. He's trying to save his job, obviously. Frost. Whipple left Pat Narduzzi and Kenny Pickett, and you're going to meld high tempo pro style pass offense with triple option. So I mean, we'll see how that goes. It's either going to be awesome or it's going to explode in his face. I think people will be entertained either way on that one, yes.
Final question before we let you get away, Nick. Beating Ohio State last year in the Big House, man, was it long overdue. We had talked about that and waited for Michigan to get a W. Now this year, down in Columbus, and I know we can't get too far ahead of ourselves because we have a lot of football to play, but man, can you imagine if Michigan rolls into that game 11-0 and Ohio State's 11-0, what a absolutely crazy atmosphere that would be in Columbus.
Yes, that would be pretty wild. We've only seen that once,
Yeah.
right? I think ever. The 1-2 never happened before. But yeah, I mean, this has the potential. I mean, Ohio State's going to be there one way or the other, or close, 1 loss, 0 losses, whatever at that point in the year. There's too much talent on offense for it not to be. And, it's up to Michigan, of course, as always, to get there and meet them. But unlike other years, Mike, this is the year where I think Ohio State has a little bit of, you have something to solve here. And Michigan you need to just reestablish yourself to a point of close to what you were last year, because the sole reason why Michigan won that game last year, and it was a big one, was the offensive line. I mean, Ohio State could not stop anything Michigan wanted to do in terms of any gap-based run, power counter, the G stuff, anything. It was all man blocking. It was a disaster. Ohio State has fired everybody, revamped the defense, hired Jim Knowles. And somebody brought this up to me the other day in a Twitter thread I was in, I should say, that it feels a little bit like when Harbaugh hired Don Brown, in that he just went and found a guy that excelled at taking away something that his rival did very well. And when Harbaugh hired Don Brown, it was, we've got to find a way to stop some of this option stuff, stop some of these. We've got to find a way to get more pressure in here and, find a way to be better in coverage on the outside, all this stuff. And it worked for a while until it didn't, and we all know the story there. They're bringing in a defensive coordinator whose job was to take less than talent and make it, better in the box against big counter run plays and power runs and all this, and find a way to beat blocks. And I think that Ohio State is really changing a lot of what they do defensively, specifically to get tougher at the point of attack, to get better at, our defensive tackles are going to be better at taking a block from your guard, so that when they play that game, they have a fighting chance. Like, that's what I've seen from every move Ryan Day has made this offseason with his coaching staff. It's been based on, how do we fix what they embarrassed us with last year, Michigan being Day. So in a weird way, it flips a little bit. Ohio State still has the talent advantage, all that, but Michigan, found the little, found the kill switch in Ryan Day's whole thing last year. They are not a tough football team at the point of attack, and I don't know, Mike, if one defensive coordinator in 1 year can change all that, because a lot of that is mentality, a lot of that is how you play a block, a lot of that is how you want to play a block and whether or not you want to do it, as we talked about, last year at the end of the year. So, yeah, that's going to be fascinating. If Michigan's run game and the quarterback situation is as good as where it was last year by the point they play Ohio State, if I was Ohio State, I'd be nervous, because I don't know if I have enough to solve it. Because if it's similar, what have you done to tell me that it's going to be different, that it would be any different than what we saw last year? So that's why I think this is really, really fascinating for Ryan Day. All the decisions they made this offseason has been really, really interesting, and I'm very curious to see how all this plays out. But I think, Mike, this could be a year where even if if Michigan has like 2 losses or something like that going into that game, it could still be a really good game, because I think these two staffs know each other better and they're smart, and I think this could be a pretty good one here this year, no matter what.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, we've got a lot of football to play before we get to that point, and we're speculating, but it should be a humdinger, as Bobby Hoover used to say, so we'll wait and see. Here with us today, as we've been talking, of course, Michigan football on our game day segment, is Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic, and as Nick and I alluded to at the top of the show, we've been doing this a long time, and always a pleasure to have you on the show, Nick. Our listeners love it, and we look forward to that next visit.
You bet, Mike, anytime.
On Quick Hits today, thanks again to Nick Baumgardner from The Athletic for joining us. Nick has covered Michigan football for a long time now, first with M Live, then the Detroit Free Press, now The Athletic. He is one of the best in the business, and he'll be back with us later in the season. As most of you know, we have had very limited media access to coaches or players during camp. That's okay. We can talk and talk and talk, but nothing anyone says really matters until September 3rd, when we get our first look at this team, and I, for one, can't wait. So next week, we return to our regular season schedule of 2 shows per week. On Tuesday's Visitors Edition, we'll hear from the radio play-by-play voice of Colorado State football, Brian Roth. Then on Thursday's Michigan Game Day segment, My guest will be the new radio voice of Michigan football, Doug Karsh. Not that Doug is a new name to most of us. He has been the sideline guy in the network for many years now and can be heard daily in the Detroit market on WXYT 97.1 The Ticket, where he has been on the air for over 20 years. So we're looking forward to having Doug join us. That's it for today, though. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Thanks for joining me, and make sure you tell your family and friends about the show. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go Blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!